Hello, hello. I am so excited to announce the rollout of some very exciting programming on a much larger, wider scale related to embodied integration. This idea to focus on this specifically came about after I went through my own really big shift following an ecstatic dance retreat. Figuring out how to live life after a big shift like that, it can be really challenging. The after of an event like that isn't really talked about so much. So people tend to be kind of left to their own devices to integrate whatever insights or whatever shifts happened. And that's not through any kind of omission or I don't think it's an oversight. I think it's a lot to take on, right? And for an organizer or for a facilitator, once you've already planned and implemented a retreat, for example, you also need your own integration. You need your own time. Basically, I design curriculum to support that process. And so whether a person's shift was activated by, it could have been a powerful event like a retreat. It could be a life transition, like something that comes into your life, and it's like everything in life can be divided into the before the thing happened and after the thing happened. Maybe it's a healing process. It could even be something like a sudden realization where it's like, how do I live this now that I've had this epiphany? How do I go back to living my life the way that it was before? Or just some other kind of abrupt change. I mean, life happens, right? And then we need to realign with whatever that event is. And I think it's super normal to feel like things are off, and maybe in some cases like they won't ever be the same again. But then it's like, how do I live this now? What do I do moving forward? Like, what are my next steps? And it can be a really confusing thing to figure out, how do I integrate this new awareness in with my existing knowledge of myself and my world and how my life presumably works, how it feels to be me in my life. And it can be challenging to know how to integrate the new awareness when you don't really know what that process needs to look like. And so this makes finding the right kind of support for that also difficult, right? Because you don't necessarily know what you need. Maybe you know how you want it to feel, maybe, but maybe not. And that's challenging. So, especially if what's happening already feels confusing and already kind of leaves you feeling like you don't know which way is up. And that's how I felt, after I went through this, I call it an activation, right? It wasn't a transformation. It's the potential for transformation, but it was an activation where I was like, it woke me up, snapped me to it. I eventually found my way. It was basically one different decision at a time. And now, I'm sitting here looking out the window in Portugal. And at the time that I attended that retreat, I lived in Colorado. I'd been in the same community for 5 years. I'd been in a relationship for 7. I was working in technology development, even though I had a background in wellness and I had a background in some of the other things that I'm doing now, music, sound. I hadn't integrated any of it, right, into what I'm doing now, for example. So my life looked so different. But I didn't feel okay in it anymore. After the retreat, it didn't fit. It didn't align with what I had suddenly realized about myself. So as I went on this walk, there were many times when I needed a very particular kind of support for everything that I was experiencing. And that kind of support, the very particular kind of support, just didn't exist. And the reason for that is because it wasn't just the mind that I needed to work with. I needed to work with the body. And I needed to work with also the nervous system, which we all talk about to great lengths now, but also the heart and the spirit and other aspects of the self that needed to be seen and needed to be validated. And there needed to be space held for all of these parts so that there's whole being congruency. This is how we move forward. And, I did my best on my own. I muddled my way along, obviously, here I am, but I learned a lot of really hard lessons. And it was really difficult. It was really difficult a lot of the time. It's something that not a lot of people know. I think some people, they look at what my life was for a period of time and they think I was just perpetually at festivals, right? And that's because I didn't really post about the heavy stuff online or share with anyone outside of my immediate family and circle of friends. I just was trying to make it through each day. I was just trying to make it through the day. And so because it was so difficult and because I needed this particular kind of support that just didn't exist, I decided to fill that gap, right? Once I got to a place of relative stability, right? And that's not to say that I'm not still in my own process, on my own journey. I will be forever, right? This is how it works. But once I arrived at a point of relative homeostasis, we'll say, I looked back and I was like, you know what? My journey could actually be, because I'm kind of a nerd like this, roughly divided into stages, into phases, you know, and kind of distinct stages actually that could be described in a particular way. And and then I got to thinking like, well, I wonder how this maps to the existing literature on this kind of a process, like you know, research that has been validated. And so I cross-referenced my experience with the extant literature. And then I was like, well, I have all these different skill sets that absolutely apply, you know, meditation and therapeutic sound and therapeutic voice and storytelling and embodied movement and somatics, you know, all these things, nervous system regulation tools. And then of course art making, you know, creative expression. And so I devised a framework that maps to the existing literature that is heavily multidisciplinary to tap into all these different parts of the self that need to be on board for this kind of a journey. And so that is, you know, after mapping my lived experience with the existing literature and with my professional expertise, that's what I'm now making widely available, is that curriculum. And it's designed for daily life. So it's designed for people who look at this and go, I don't have time for that. That's who it's designed for. So if that's you, it's designed for you, right? Because none of us have nearly as much time as we wish we did, yeah? And so it's designed for two different groups. So the first group is individuals, like individuals the way I was, where it's like I'm on my own journey. I'm trying to trying to muddle my way through my days and trying to integrate this massive insight that just came through and rocked my world, right? You know, whether you're integrating a big event like I was, or it's a life transition, healing, or just abrupt change, the curriculum is heavily customizable. And so it's tools, and then it's also live support. So I'm offering one-to-one coaching as well as group coaching and group facilitation to help people through this and to help people identify what their next steps need to be in the context of a really busy life, right? And so this isn't the sort of thing where somebody has to, I mean, of course, it does take some time and some energy and definitely commitment and dedication, but it's not something where you have to like take off work, right? Or interrupt your life, you know, in a significant way to be able to keep it going, right? I wanted to design it to be accessible in this way. It's so important. And then the second population, and I'm really excited about this, is for organizers themselves or for practitioners, like therapeutic practitioners of some kind who want to extend integration support to the people that they're in charge of, but maybe it's beyond the scope of what they can offer. Right? Like they recognize the importance of it, but it's just not something that they're positioned to do themselves for whatever reason, whatever the reason may be. And in that case, I can come in as a consultant to help with adjusting the programming itself so it integrates integration, right? No pun intended. Or work in some facilitation with the groups that they work with, right? Where if it's a retreat organizer, for example, maybe I facilitate an event post-retreat for your people to help them soften their landing and help them kind of identify what some possible next steps could be to keep the insights that they've experienced alive for long enough for them to embody them, right? Because things, they come in through short-term memory and they're there for a period of time, but if we don't do something with them, if they don't really have a way of anchoring in, then over time they kind of fade. And that's not to say the awareness totally goes away, but it doesn't necessarily unfold into something that is transformative, right? Without some intention. Yeah. And so that's what this does, is this sort of pulls in the intentional piece, the intentionality to really help things blossom. What I went through was not personal. It was not specific to me in that, like, it's archetypical. Like other people could do it too. You know, you could do it too. So I will say too, you don't have to blow up your life to undergo a really big shift, right? Like maybe you're mostly content in your life, but you know that there are some things that you would like to experience differently, or a way that you would like to embody sort of life differently. And this kind of curriculum can support that as well, right? Big shifts, small shifts. It's ultimately, it's about taking this new awareness that has come into our sort of sphere of being and making sure that it's able to get anchored in a way that lasts. I mean, that is the point, right? And it was just this incredible realization when I realized that what had happened for me was not specific to me. Like anyone can do it. And so it was like, especially given the difficulty that I encountered, I want to make sure to make it accessible to people. You know, I don't want to gatekeep on this. Another hat that I used to wear, like my first master's is in education. So I worked as an instructional designer for a number of years. And so that's another skill set that I'm able to pull in, to pull all of this together into something that is really comprehensive and is really thorough and supportive, and covers all of the key elements that a good quality curriculum needs to cover. Integration is not a new concept. It's something that's been around for, I don't know, millennia, because it's a very natural process that the earth herself goes through, right? True integration is actually a really gradual process. And, I hear people say, oh, take a day off work to integrate. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, resting is good. Like, you need to have some stillness and be able to just be, if you've had a really transformative shift. But integration itself, for something really to integrate, takes a much longer period of time. I think it's important that there be specific support for it. I mean, daily life can be really intense, right? Like, the pressures are really intense. It's about sticking with it. And as I was mentioning earlier, it's about making one different decision when presented with the same set of options on a consistent basis. And then trusting that that's going to lead to another different decision that you then make consistently, right? And that will lead to another. And this is what I call following the thread. Right? So like, you don't necessarily know exactly where you're going to wind up, but as long as you're making the next right decision, you can trust that where you wind up is going to be what's right. And it's amazing how eventually you wake up and you realize that what you feel is actually glimmers of contentment, right? It's a sense of well-being. It's a sense of contentment in your life and rightness, where you're no longer surviving or trying so hard to be okay, right? I was living a life of silent desperation before I went through this process. I am now using my voice, which I hadn't for 20 years, right, in any kind of expressive way. I'm now playing music with people, in front of people, which I hadn't done in over 20 years. I am aligning my life with what I know to be true for me. Right? Like, using my voice in the most meaningful way possible in that regard, in that I am living my truth, right? Not to sound cliche, but that's what it is. And I tell people it feels like a giant hand just reached down and like pulled me out of my life and dropped me down somewhere else and was like, all right, figure it out, human. And so I did, and I mapped it, and now I'm flipping it around and making it available to as many people as possible, because we all, I think, have a calling, whether you identify as spiritual or not. Like, that's irrelevant, right? Like, all of us have sort of a reason for being, a reason, something that really drives us, something that really calls us. And I think we all deserve the chance to align our lives with that, to support that. So that's what this is. It's me, like, traveling this path and then turning around and reaching out a hand and saying, all right, like, let's go. You ready? And that's what it is. This is my way of extending a hand. It is possible for you, right? If what I said just now resonated, if you feel the pull, but you're not quite sure, like, how to make the shift, like, it is possible for you. You can do it, regardless of whatever your circumstances are. You can do it. So you're going to start seeing a lot more coming through newsletters, a lot more coming through social media, a lot more in general. I'm so excited to finally be at a point where I'm able to launch it on a much larger scale. This is something I've been developing for several years, and I've been sharing with people and coaching people even. It's not something I've made a big announcement about it, but I want to open it up to as many people as possible, and really scale it, so we all have this chance to step into a life that supports us in really living what is true. So see how we can potentially work together or connect around this topic. This is something I'm super passionate about, and I'm just so excited to be at a point where I can offer it. So from my heart to yours, thank you, and talk to you soon.